I am Lena Thompson. I am 68 years old. I am a widow, and I am the woman who built an empire. My name is etched in stone on the libraries at Spelman College and the business school at Morehouse, right next to my husband's. It's on the heavy brass plaque in the lobby of the Thompson Foundation, the largest private benefactor of Black-owned startups in the state of Georgia. And it's on every single incorporation document for Thompson Real Estate, the company my late husband Marcus and I bled for, turning a single duplex in a forgotten neighborhood into a significant piece of the Atlanta skyline you see today. Marcus was the builder, the heart, the man who saw communities where others saw blight. I was the strategist, the spine, the woman who read the fine print and negotiated the deals. But now my family looks at me and sees nothing but a vault. A senile old woman sitting on a pile of gold, too addled to know her place, too stubborn to just die and get out of the way. They forget that a dragon guarding her hoard is never truly asleep. Last Sunday, at our regular family dinner, my daughter-in-law, Brittany, followed me into the kitchen. She cornered me between the gleaming stainless steel counter and the sub-zero refrigerator, her eyes cold and sharp. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, her voice dripping a venom that had nothing to do with joy. "And it's Marcus's baby, your husband's baby, you tacky old woman." I looked at her, at this calculating, desperate little girl I had welcomed into my home. I saw the web she was spinning. I saw the lies she had so carefully constructed. And I laughed right in her face. It was a deep, rolling laugh that came from my gut, a sound that hadn't been heard in this house since Marcus died. "Don't worry, dear," I told her, my voice perfectly calm. Weeks later, at the conservatorship hearing she and my son filed to have me declared insane, I handed the judge a single folded document. The DNA test didn't just ruin her, it ruined the shrew. Before I continue this story, please leave a comment telling me where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you believe that a woman's value, her power, and her mind only increase with age. The tension at my Sunday dinner table was so thick you could cut it with the sterling silver carving knife I was holding. I had just placed the roasted chicken on the platter, the one I make every weekend from my mother's recipe. 4 hours brined, stuffed with lemon, rosemary, and thyme. The aroma should have filled my formal dining room with warmth, but the air was already spoiled. My son Jamal was nervously tapping his fork against his plate. The rhythmic tink, tink. Tink was the only sound besides the grandfather clock in the hall. He's 40 years old, a vice president at the foundation, and he still carries the demeanor of a high school principal about to be called into the principal's office. In the presence of his wife, he shrinks. He becomes a jumpy, anxious shell, desperate for her approval, terrified of her moods. He finally licked his lips and looked at Brittany. She, in contrast, was perfectly still, a predator waiting for the signal. She gave him a sharp, almost invisible nod. The signal had been given. "Mom?" he started. His voice was already weak. He cleared his throat and tried again, forcing a casual tone that didn't fit him. "Mom, Brittany and I were looking at the proposal again for the wellness spa. It's a fantastic opportunity, really. We really think the trust should—" I set the carving knife down on the silver rest, slowly. The small, heavy click echoed in the silence. Jamal stopped talking, his words dying in his throat. "Jamal," I said, my voice quiet but carrying the weight of the boardroom, "we are not having this discussion again." I looked him dead in the eye. My son, the man who was supposed to be the future of this family. Your father's legacy, our legacy, is not a piggy bank for your wife's whims. The Thompson Foundation is funding scholarships for young Black men and women at Morehouse and Spelman. It is building community centers in neighborhoods this city forgot. It is not, and it never will be, about funding a luxury wellness spa that's projected to fail in 6 months. They think I'm just some old woman who likes gardening and goes to church. They forget I'm the one who stared down city council in the 80s to get our first rezoning permit. They forget I'm the one who negotiated the land deals for the first 3 subdivisions while Marcus built the buildings. They forget I can read a balance sheet faster than Brittany can read a fashion magazine. Brittany, my daughter-in-law, slammed her fork down. The sound made Jamal jump. Her voice dripped with that fake, sugary sweetness she uses when she's furious, a honey-thick drawl that's meant to sound charming, but only ever sounds condescending. "Mama Lena," she said, "this isn't foo-foo, as you call it. This is a real business opportunity. We're projecting 30% returns in the first year. The market for high-end wellness is wide open." I gave a short, hard laugh. I couldn't help it. 30%? Really? Is that what the opportunity was last year, Brittany? The one with the cryptocurrency that lost $50,000 of your husband's personal money? Or was it the luxury import business the year before that, the one that never managed to import a single car but cost us a fortune in legal fees? The answer, as always, is no. Brittany's perfectly made-up face turned blotchy red. She threw her heavy linen napkin onto her unfinished plate. "This is unbelievable. He's dead. Why do you keep hoarding that money like some old dragon? It's Jamal's birthright." "My birthright is what I build, not what I'm given," I said, my voice cold. Jamal panicked, just like he always does. He shrank in his chair, wringing his hands. "Brittany, honey, please, don't. Mom, she didn't mean dragon." Brittany stood up, scraping her chair back across the antique hardwood floor. The sound was like a scream. "I need some air." She glared at me, her blue eyes promising a fight. "Mother," she said, the word sounding like an insult, "can I speak to you in the kitchen?" "Alone?" Jamal looked like he was about to be sick. "Honey, maybe we should just go. It's getting late." "Alone?" she repeated, her gaze locked on me. I smiled, a small, tight smile. "By all means." I stood and walked into the kitchen. I heard her heels click-clacking on the marble tiles behind me. She shoved the swinging door, letting it slam back toward Jamal, who was left alone at the table, a portrait of weakness. The kitchen was my sanctuary. It was a large, warm room with a massive granite island in the center, copper pots hanging from a rack above. But she made it feel cold. She walked right past me, cornering me between the counter and the sub-zero refrigerator. She was trying to intimidate me, to physically box me in. It was a pathetic, juvenile power move. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, her voice low and dripping with a venom that had nothing to do with joy. I just looked at her. I didn't flinch. "Well," I said, "that's news. I suppose congratulations are in order, though you don't seem very happy about it." "Oh, I'm thrilled," she hissed. "But you won't be." She leaned in, her perfume thick and cloying. "And it's Marcus's baby. Your husband's baby, you tacky old woman." I stood there for a second, the sound of the running refrigerator filling the silence. Then I laughed. It wasn't a small chuckle. It was a deep, genuine, rolling laugh that came from my gut. It was the laugh of a woman who had just heard the most absurd, ridiculous joke of her entire life. I actually had to wipe a tear from the corner of my eye. "Brittany," I said, trying to catch my breath. "Oh, honey, you are truly embarrassing yourself. What on earth are you talking about?" My laugh wasn't fake. It was real. Because I knew the one simple, biological fact that this little grifter, this little gold digger, could not possibly know. My husband, Marcus Thompson, had a vasectomy 30 years ago. It was 1995. Jamal had just been born. We looked at our beautiful baby boy, and we looked at the real estate empire we were trying to build from scratch. We were working 18-hour days. We decided together that one child was enough. I was the one who drove Marcus to the clinic at St. Mary's. I was the one who held his hand while he winced. I was the one who filed the doctor's discharge papers right alongside our marriage certificate in the home safe. Brittany's face contorted in rage. She wasn't expecting me to laugh. She was expecting me to crumble. She was expecting me to be shocked, horrified, betrayed. "You think I'm joking?" she snarled, dropping the whisper. "You think you know everything? You think Marcus told you everything?" She took a step back, her confidence returning, cold and practiced. She had prepared for this. "Marcus froze his sperm 10 years ago. He did it without telling you." The laughter died in my throat. Not because I believed her, but because I was seeing the depth of her lie. This wasn't just a desperate, sloppy attack. This was a plan. He was disappointed in Jamal, she continued, her voice dripping with a fake sympathy that made my skin crawl. He knew Jamal was weak. He knew Jamal would never be the man to run the company. He knew Jamal would never give him a real heir. My blood ran cold. She was twisting Marcus's greatest disappointment, his quiet sorrow over Jamal's lack of ambition, and she was turning it into a weapon against me. Marcus wanted a real heir, Lena, she continued, someone worthy of the Thompson name, so he went to a private clinic in Florida, and he asked me, his trusted daughter-in-law, to carry that heir if anything ever happened to him. She was good. I had to give her that. She had taken a sliver of truth, Jamal's weakness, and woven an entire fantasy around it. He left me a letter, she said, reaching into her designer handbag. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was thick, expensive-looking, embossed with the logo of a Blevins Wellness Clinic in Florida. She unfolded it. There at the bottom was a signature I knew as well as my own, Marcus's. "It's all here," Brittany said, tapping the paper. His signature, his request, his legacy, my baby. I knew that signature was a forgery, but it was a good forgery. This girl had come with props. She had built a narrative. This was premeditated. I took a slow breath, pushing down the rage that was boiling in my chest. I looked that child dead in the eye. "Do what you have to do, Brittany," I said, my voice as cold and hard as the granite counter we were standing at. I physically pushed past her, my shoulder brushing hers, and shoved the kitchen door open. The sound of my return made Jamal jump. Brittany stormed past me moments later, her face a mask of fury. She grabbed her purse from the dining room floor. "We're leaving," she snapped at Jamal. "But honey, we haven't had dessert," Jamal stammered, scrambling to get up and follow her. "Now, Jamal!" He gave me a look, a pathetic mix of apology and fear, before scurrying out the front door after his wife. The door slammed shut, rattling the china in my display cabinet. Silence. Then, the pantry door creaked open. My 17-year-old granddaughter, Imani, stepped out. She was holding her cell phone up, her finger hovering over the screen. "I recorded every single word, Grandma," she said, her voice shaking just a little. I stared at her, completely stunned. "Imani? How long were you in there?" Imani is Jamal's daughter from his first love, a wonderful woman who passed away far too young. Imani, she is smart, 10 times smarter than her father, and she cannot stand Brittany. She spends most of her weekends here at the main house, just to be away from her stepmother's toxicity. "I went in to grab some snacks," Imani said. "Then I heard her yelling. I knew she was after your money again, so I started recording." She walked over to me, her young face serious. "She's lying, right? About Grandpa?" "Of course she's lying," I said, my voice tired. "Your grandfather couldn't have—" I stopped. "But she has forged papers, Imani. She has a plan." Imani's eyes hardened. She looked so much like Marcus in that moment. She looked at the recording on her phone. "This is good," she said, "but it's just her word against yours. She has fake papers. That means we need real proof." I looked at my granddaughter, this brilliant, brave young woman, the only other person in this family who seemed to understand what Marcus's legacy actually meant, the only one willing to fight for it. A slow smile spread across my face. The fear was gone. The shock was gone. Only cold, hard clarity remained. "You are absolutely right, Imani," I said. I picked up the dirty plates from the table. "Brittany wants to play business. She thinks she's a shark." I walked into the kitchen and put the plates in the sink. "Well, she just swam into my ocean. We're going to show that little girl how a real CEO goes to war." 3 days later, I was in my study. I was reviewing the quarterly reports for the Thompson Foundation, trying to focus on the work Marcus and I had started together. I expected a lawsuit. I expected lawyers to send threatening letters about inheritance rights for this phantom baby. I was prepared for that fight. What I was not prepared for was the thick envelope delivered by a court process server on Tuesday morning. I signed for it. I sat down at Marcus's desk, the heavy oak desk he had built this company from, and I opened the envelope. My hands were steady. I thought I knew what was coming. I was wrong. It wasn't a lawsuit for inheritance. It was worse. So much worse. It was a petition, an emergency petition to place me under a conservatorship. My eyes scanned the page, blurring over the cold legal jargon, vile words that didn't seem real. Lacks mental capacity. Exhibiting signs of advanced dementia. Inability to manage her own affairs. A danger to herself and her financial estate. And then I saw the evidence. Attached to the petition was a sworn affidavit from Brittany. I read it, and the blood in my veins turned to ice. On the night of October 12th, she had written, I attempted to share the joyous news with my mother-in-law, Lena Thompson. I informed her that I was pregnant with her late husband's child, a child conceived through medical intervention as per Mr. Marcus Thompson's wishes. The lie was right there, in black and white, sworn before a court. Upon hearing this news, the affidavit continued, Mrs. Thompson became volatile. She burst into hysterical, uncontrollable laughter, lasting for several minutes. Hysterical laughter. She then entered a state of paranoid denial, claiming the child could not possibly exist. It is clear she is no longer living in reality. She is confused, and we fear she is mentally unfit to manage the multi-million-dollar Thompson Trust. That little shrew! I dropped the papers on the desk. My hands were shaking now. She had taken my laugh, my one moment of genuine, powerful understanding of her pathetic little scheme. And she had twisted it. She had weaponized it. She had painted me as insane. She was using my strength as her proof of my weakness. This wasn't just about money anymore. This wasn't about a share of the pie. She wanted the whole bakery. She wanted to strip me of my name, my mind, my company, my legacy. She wanted to lock me away and take everything. She wanted me erased. Before I could even process the full scope of this betrayal, the private line on my desk rang, the red light blinking. It was Howard James, our family lawyer for 40 years, the man who handled Marcus's will. Lena, he said. His voice wasn't warm and familiar. It was cautious, worried. Howard, I said, my voice tight. Lena, I just saw a copy of the petition. It was filed by your son and daughter-in-law. He paused. I could hear the deep discomfort in his voice. This is a very strong claim, Lena. They have medical documents attached from that clinic in Florida. The forged papers. Howard, he continued, I have to be frank with you as your counsel. Maybe the best course of action here is just to agree to the psychological evaluation, just to show the court we're cooperating. I hung up on Howard. I didn't even say goodbye. My hands were shaking. Not with fear, but with a cold, clear rage. I stabbed the button on my intercom. Brenda, get my son on the line, now! She must have heard the ice in my voice, because 2 seconds later, Jamal was on the line. Mom, is everything okay? My office, 10 minutes. I clicked off before he could argue. He showed up in 7. He walked into Marcus's office, my office now, the room that should have been his birthright. He looked like a little boy who had just been caught setting a fire. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at the corner of my desk. Mom, I was going to tell you. I didn't let him finish. I threw the petition onto the desk. The papers slid across the polished mahogany, stopping right in front of him. You signed this. It wasn't a question. You signed your name to this filth. You are telling a court of law that your mother is insane. I looked at my son, my 40-year-old son. All his life he's been weak, desperate for approval from anyone who would offer it. First from his father, and now from that cunning, venomous woman. He was a puppet, and Brittany was pulling every single string. He finally looked up, his eyes wide and pleading. Mom, you don't understand. Brittany has proof. Proof? I said, my voice dangerously quiet. She has a letter, Mom, from that clinic in Florida. It has Dad's signature. He was starting to believe his own lies. He wanted another child. He told her he was disappointed in me. He wanted a real heir. The words hit me harder than the petition. He was using his own father's memory, his own deep-seated insecurity, as an excuse. "And you," he stammered, taking a step back, "you were acting strange. You laughed. When she told you about the baby, you laughed like you were crazy. Brittany said you're losing it, that you're in denial." He was pacing now, frantic, his hands twisting together. I'm just trying to protect Dad's legacy until the baby gets here. Someone has to." That did it. I stood up. I walked around the heavy oak desk until I was standing right in front of him, close enough to see the sweat on his forehead. "Your father's legacy," I said, my voice low and shaking with controlled fury, "does not need protection from me. It needs protection from that snake you married, and it needs protection from you." I pointed to the door. "Get out." He actually recoiled. "What? Mom, wait. Get out of my office, out of this building." And he puffed himself up then, a pathetic attempt to find some courage. "You can't kick me out. I'm the petitioner. As the future conservator, I have a right." I didn't even look at him. I walked back to my chair, sat down, and pressed the button on my desk phone. "Brenda, call security. I need Mr. Thompson escorted from the premises. He's trespassing." Jamal's face went white. "Mom, you can't do this." "I just did," I said, picking up my pen and turning back to my reports, as if he wasn't even there. That Sunday morning, I walked into Ebenezer Baptist Church, just as I have every Sunday for the past 40 years. I am not just a member here, I am a pillar. My name is on the plaque in the lobby for funding the new wing. I am an elder. Marcus and I helped build this community. But that morning the air was cold. People who normally rushed over to hug me, to ask about the foundation, just nodded. They looked at me, then quickly looked away, whispering behind their hymnals. I saw it immediately. She had been here before me. Deidre, my best friend for 40 years, the woman who held my hand at Marcus's funeral, hurried over to me. Her face wasn't full of its usual warmth. It was twisted in pain and pity. "Lena," she whispered, grabbing my arm and pulling me into the alcove by the stained glass window. "What on earth are you doing?" "Doing? Deidre, what are you talking about? I'm here for service." "No," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Brittany, she and Jamal, they spoke with Pastor Davis yesterday. Lena, she told him everything." "Told him what? Her lies?" Deidre looked pained. "She told him she is carrying Marcus's child, and that you are trying to disinherit the baby, that you're fighting her for the money." My blood ran cold. She hadn't just filed a lawsuit. She had poisoned the well. She had come to my church, my community, my home, and painted me as a bitter, wicked, greedy old woman. She was trying to take my name. "Deidre," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "that is a vicious lie. You know Marcus. You've known him for 30 years. He would never—" "She has papers, Lena," Deidre said, cutting me off. Her eyes were filled with that awful, condescending pity. "She showed the pastor a letter from the clinic. From Marcus." "It's a fake, Deidre. Marcus had a vasectomy 30 years ago." Deidre's face just crumpled in sadness. She patted my hand, the way you pat a distressed child. "Oh, Lena," she said, her voice soft. "Brittany warned us you were in denial, that you've been confused lately." She squeezed my hand. "Honey, maybe you should just rest. Take a step back. Let Jamal and Brittany handle things for a while. The stress is clearly getting to you." I pulled my hand away as if I'd been burned. Even Deidre, my closest friend. She thought I was insane. I realized then that Brittany was playing a much bigger, much more dangerous game than I had ever imagined. She wasn't just coming for my money. She wasn't just coming for my company. She was coming for my mind. I walked back into my house and the silence was deafening. The heavy oak door clicked shut, and for the first time since Marcus died, I felt utterly, completely alone. I had been publicly humiliated in my own church. My best friend of 40 years, Deidre, had looked at me like I was a senile fool. I leaned against the wall in the foyer, my legs feeling weak. The petition, the lawyer, the whispers at church, it was too much. "Grandma?" Imani's voice came from the study. I hadn't even realized she was in the house. I straightened my suit jacket, pushed the weakness down, and walked into Marcus's office. She was sitting at my desk, her own laptop open, the screen glowing. She looked angry. "You need to see this," she said. She didn't get up. She just turned the laptop toward me. "She's destroying you online." She pointed to the screen. It was an Atlanta community Facebook group. "It's an anonymous post," Imani explained, "but it's her. I recognize the phrases she uses." I bent over and read the post. "My heart breaks for my friend. Her mother-in-law, a wealthy pillar of the community, is suffering from severe dementia and has become paranoid and cruel. She's trying to evict her pregnant daughter-in-law." My stomach turned. "She's painting me as a villain to the entire city." "She's calculated everything," I said, sinking into the heavy leather chair opposite the desk. My fight was gone. "Imani, she knows. She must have known." "Known what, Grandma?" I looked at the picture of Marcus on the wall. "The vasectomy records. The clinic was St. Mary's. It was caught in that big flood 15 years ago. All their paper archives, gone. Destroyed." I finally said their words out loud. "There is no proof, Imani. It's just my word against her forged letter." The full weight of the conspiracy hit me. "That's why she's so confident," I whispered. "She knew our proof was gone before she ever launched her attack." Imani stared at me for a long second. Then, slowly, she closed the laptop. The click echoed in the quiet room. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Imani, did you hear me? We have no way to prove she's lying." "No," Imani said, standing up. "We have no way to prove Marcus couldn't have kids. She closed that door." Imani started pacing, just like Marcus used to when he was solving a problem. "So, we stopped trying to open that door. We used the door she left open." "What are you talking about?" Imani stopped pacing and looked right at me, her eyes just as sharp as her grandfather's. "She's using fake medical records to attack you, so we use real medicine to attack her. She's lying about being pregnant with Grandpa's baby. Fine." Imani leaned forward. "We prove who she's actually pregnant with." A shiver went down my spine. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Imani said, her voice dropping, "if it's not Grandpa's baby, then whose baby is it?" I looked at my granddaughter, this 17-year-old high school student. "Imani, how could we possibly find that out?" Imani smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile, not the smile of a child. It was the smile of a Thompson. "She thinks you're just a tacky old woman, Grandma. She forgot you taught me how to read a balance sheet when I was 12. She picked up her phone. "And she definitely forgot what I told her I wanted to major in." "What?" "Digital forensics and data recovery." Imani turned back to her laptop. Her expression was all business. "It's about digital security, Grandma," Imani explained, her fingers already flying across the keyboard. "Dad added Brittany to the Thompson family phone plan when they got married. He thought he was being generous." "What does that have to do with anything?" "He also paid for the upgraded family cloud storage. And Brittany, she was careless. She was stupid. She backed up her entire phone to the family cloud thinking it was private." Imani looked up at me, a grin set to her jaw. "Dad never checks it, but I do." She opened a folder on her desktop. "I've been recovering her deleted backups for the last 6 months. She thinks when she deletes something, it's gone." Imani almost smiled. "It's never really gone." I watched her type, this 17-year-old girl, moving with a confidence that chilled me and gave me hope all at once. Thank God for Generation Z. Thank God Marcus and I had this child in our corner. "Okay," Imani said, opening a file. "Here's why she's so desperate. Here's why she needs the trust fund now." She turned the screen to me. It was a spreadsheet she'd made. Grandma, she's in debt. Deep. I leaned in, my reading glasses sliding down my nose. I looked at the numbers. This can't be right. $150,000? Not student loans, Grandma, Imani said. Look at the vendors. It's online gambling, offshore sports betting sites. She's been losing. $150,000. She wasn't just greedy, she was drowning. And then, Imani said, clicking another file, there's this. I leaned closer. It was a series of bank transfers, small, repeated payments. I see them, I said. 4 payments of $2,500 to a Blevins Wellness Clinic in Florida. That's the same clinic on her fake IVF letter, I whispered. I know, Imani said, so I looked him up. Her fingers typed again. A new screen popped up. It was a news article from the Miami Herald, dated 2 years ago. I read the headline out loud, my voice shaking. Dr. Aaron Blevins, stripped of medical license for falsifying patient records. My breath caught. So she didn't just forge a signature, I said, the ugly pieces clicking into place. She hired a disgraced professional. She paid him to create a fraudulent medical history. I looked at Imani, the full scope of the conspiracy hitting me. This is a federal crime. Imani shook her head slowly, her eyes dark. I think it's worse than that, Grandma. Worse? What could possibly be worse? Imani looked me straight in the eye. I don't think she was paying him for fake IVF papers. I don't think there was any IVF. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle in the quiet office. I think she's just plain old-fashioned, cheating on my dad. What? I whispered. What do you mean you think she's cheating? Imani didn't answer. She just opened another folder on her desktop. This one was labeled Messages. She was sloppy, Grandma. She deleted these from her phone, but not from the cloud backup. These are from someone named Rick. Rick? The name scratched at my memory. I thought back. About 8 months ago? Yes. Brittany had joined that expensive new gym downtown. She wouldn't stop talking about it. My new personal trainer is just amazing, she'd gushed over dinner. He's completely changing my outlook. I remember thinking it was just another phase. Imani was already typing, her fingers a blur. Rick Donovan, she murmured, reading from the screen. Personal trainer at Atlanta Prime Fitness, specialization. She stopped, and her head snapped up. What is it? His specialization, Grandma. It's listed right here on his profile. Prenatal and postnatal fitness. My stomach clenched. Imani, open the messages. She clicked the file. The deleted texts filled the screen. My granddaughter and I sat there, in my dead husband's office, and read the betrayal in real time. The first one was from Rick. You sure the fool believes it's his? My heart hammered. The fool. He meant Jamal. Then Brittany's reply. It was dated just last week. He's completely convinced. He bought the whole failed IVF story. He'll never, ever know that Marcus II is ours. He's just so desperate to be a father, he'd believe anything. I felt the air leave my lungs. She wasn't just lying about Marcus. She was lying to Jamal, too. The next message from Rick popped up. What about the old woman? Is she buying the story? Imani's hand tightened into a fist on the desk. Then Brittany's reply, the one that sealed her fate. She's buying it completely. She actually thinks it's Marcus's. The crazy old bat is about to be declared incompetent by a judge. We're going to have it all, baby. Everything. I sat back in my leather chair, stunned. My mind couldn't even process the layers of this evil. She wasn't just lying to me. She was lying to my son. She was cheating on him, and she was planning to pass off her lover's baby as my husband's or my son's. Whichever lie would get her the money faster. She wasn't just a grifter. She was a viper, and I had let her into my home. I focused on one of Brittany's texts, the line about the IVF. Imani, I said, my voice quiet. She wrote, he bought the whole failed IVF story. What does that mean? Your father? He and Brittany were trying IVF? Imani looked down at her hands. She looked ashamed. Not for herself, but for her father. "Yeah," she said. I overheard them fighting about it a few months ago, after she was already pregnant. But before she started this thing with Grandpa's name." "What did they say?" "Dad was yelling. He was heartbroken. He said, 'The doctor said it was impossible, Brittany. Both times. My counts are too low.' I think they tried twice last year. Both times failed. The doctor told him it was unlikely he could ever have kids." Imani looked up, her eyes flashing with anger. "He was destroyed, Grandma. He really, really wanted another kid. A real family with her." And just like that, the final, ugliest piece of the puzzle slammed into place. I finally understood. Brittany knew Jamal was desperate. She knew he was devastated by his infertility. So when her affair with this Rick resulted in a pregnancy, she had a perfect cover. She just lied to my son. She let him believe a miracle had happened. She let him believe this baby was his. She used his deepest pain, his deepest desire, to cover her tracks. And then she got even greedier. Why settle for just having Jamal's baby when she could aim higher? Why not use the pregnancy to steal everything? She invented the story about Marcus, the forged letter, the fake medical records. She decided to tell me the baby was my husband's, while telling my son the baby was his. She was playing them both. She was running two scams at the same time, using the same child as bait. "She played both of them," Imani whispered, her voice filled with a disgust that matched my own. "She lied to Dad to cover the affair, and she lied to you to get the money." I stood up from the desk. The shock was gone. The hurt was gone. All that was left was a pure, cold resolve. "She didn't fool your grandfather," I said, my voice hard. "He knew a bad deal when he saw one, and she is not going to fool us." I looked at my granddaughter, my true heir. We have her plan. We have her motive. Now, we go get the proof. "What proof?" "She's lying about who the father is," I said, a new, sharp plan forming in my mind. "We're going to need DNA, Imani. We need DNA from everyone." I didn't waste a second. I picked up the phone on my desk and dialed the number I knew by heart, the private line for Jackson. Jackson is ex-APD, the best investigator in Atlanta, and he's the only person outside of this family I trust with the Thompson name. He picked up on the second ring. "Jackson?" "No, hello. Just business." "Jackson, it's Lena Thompson. I have a situation, a sensitive one." "I only handle sensitive Mrs. Thompson. What do you need?" "I need a DNA sample. A man named Rick Donovan. He's a personal trainer at Atlanta Prime Fitness." I heard the quiet sound of him typing on his keyboard. "Rick Donovan. Got him. Young, fit, likes to post pictures of his clients." "I don't care what he posts," I said, my voice sharp. "I care what he leaves behind. I need his DNA, Jackson. A water bottle, a coffee cup, a discarded cigarette. I need it yesterday." There was a half-second pause. "This is unofficial, I take it?" "Completely. Discretion is everything." "Understood," Jackson said. "Give me 24 hours. A gym is a sloppy place. People leave things. A coffee cup, a straw. It's no problem. I'll have a viable sample for you by tomorrow afternoon." "Thank you, Jackson." I hung up. One piece of the puzzle was moving. Now for the second. I turned to Imani. She was still analyzing Brittany's digital footprint. "We have the lover. Now we need the control sample. I need your father's DNA." Imani didn't even look up from her screen. "Don't worry about it, Grandma. I'll handle that." "How?" She finally looked at me, her eyes tired but razor sharp. "Because he's weak, and he feels guilty. He's going to come back here tonight, alone. He'll try to reason with you. He'll want to play the peacemaker." She was right. At exactly 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. It was Jamal. Just as Imani had predicted, he looked pathetic. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His eyes were red. He walked right past me into the living room. "Mom," he said, his voice pleading. "Mom, We have to stop this. This lawsuit. It's tearing the family apart. I sat in my armchair, calmly sipping my evening tea. Is it, Jamal? Or is it just tearing you apart? Brittany is just... She's emotional. She's pregnant, he pleaded, his hands twisting together. She's carrying my brother. My heart broke all over again. He actually believed it. He had convinced himself of this disgusting lie. He believed his dead father had a secret child. She's carrying Dad's baby, Mom. Can't you just accept it? He wanted this. He left her the letter. I stood up slowly and walked to the bar cart. I poured a heavy glass of scotch. I needed to play my part. I need time to think, Jamal, I said, making my voice sound old and confused. This is all just... It's so much for me to handle. He took the glass eagerly, his eyes lighting up with relief. Yes, exactly. Just think about it. That's all I'm asking. He drank the scotch down in 2 large gulps, desperate to believe he had convinced me. He set the heavy crystal glass down on the coaster. I'll talk to her, Mom. I'll get her to back off the conservatorship. Just meet with the lawyers. Just listen. I'll think about it, I said again. He left, clearly feeling like he had accomplished something. The moment the front door closed, Imani emerged from the shadows of the hallway. She was wearing a pair of blue nitrile gloves. She carefully picked up the glass Jamal had used, her fingers only touching the very bottom. 1 Thompson family control sample, she said, sealing it in a Ziploc bag. Ready for Jackson. The next few months were a special kind of hell. Brittany's lawyers, citing the delicate nature of her pregnancy, managed to delay the conservatorship hearing. A high-risk pregnancy, they called it. My eye, I thought. The only thing high risk was her blood pressure from all the lying she was doing. But we had to wait. The court system moves slowly, and a pregnant woman claiming to be persecuted by her demented mother-in-law was a very sympathetic picture. So we waited. But we were not idle. Jackson had come through, just as he promised. He delivered a sealed evidence bag containing a half-empty water bottle, Rick Donovan's. We sent both samples, Jamal's glass and Rick's bottle, to a private lab in Chicago, one that had no ties to Atlanta or the Thompson name. The results came back a week later, emailed to Imani in an encrypted file. We had our 2 control samples. We had the DNA of the husband she was lying to and the DNA of the lover she was lying with. All we needed now was the final piece of the puzzle. We needed the baby. For months we watched her, or rather, Imani watched her. Brittany's social media became a performance. Endless photos of her miracle pregnancy, long sickening posts about how she missed Marcus, and how this baby was a gift from heaven that he had planned for her. She was building her public case, painting herself as the grieving widow and devoted mother. Then, 5 months after that night in my kitchen, the baby was born. A boy. Brittany didn't even wait a week. She didn't wait for her stitches to heal. The first thing she did was hold a press-friendly naming ceremony. She didn't invite me, of course. She didn't need to. She invited every local blogger and society columnist in Atlanta. Imani showed me the article on her phone. There was Brittany, glowing in a white lace dress, holding a tiny newborn. Jamal stood beside her, looking confused but proud. The headline read, "Welcome to the world, Marcus Thompson II, the future heir to the Thompson legacy." I looked at the picture. This tiny, innocent child, already being used as a pawn in his mother's disgusting game. "She's not even trying to be subtle," Imani said, her voice tight with disgust. "She's building the public narrative. She's staking her claim. When she goes to court, she wants the judge to have already read about Marcus II. I just nodded, a cold calm settling over me. I looked at the picture of Brittany, smiling her fake smile for the cameras. "Good," I said. Imani looked at me confused. "Good?" "Yes, good." I stood up and looked out my window at the Atlanta skyline. Let her build it. Let her tell the whole world. Let her shout it from the rooftops. I turned back to my granddaughter. The higher the building, Imani, the harder it falls. I sat with Imani in my study. The lab results for Jamal and Rick were sealed in evidence bags, locked securely in the safe behind Marcus's portrait. "We have the controls," I said, my voice quiet. "Now we need the variable. We need the baby's DNA." Imani shook her head, chewing on her thumbnail. "She'll never let you near it, Grandma. She'll guard that baby like a dragon. She knows DNA is the one thing that can expose her. She's paranoid." A slow smile spread across my face. Imani was right. "She won't let me near him," I agreed. "But she won't hide him. She can't hide him." Imani looked confused. "What do you mean?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the gardens that Marcus had planted. "That baby isn't just a child to her, Imani. It's her trophy. It's her justification. It's her winning lottery ticket. And a person like Brittany doesn't hide a winning ticket. She flaunts it." Imani's eyes widened as she understood. "The church." "Exactly," I said, turning back to her. "She's already poisoned the well there. She's painted me as the villain. She won't be able to resist showing them the proof of her tragic story. She'll want the entire congregation to see Marcus II. I picked up my phone and dialed Jackson. "Jackson, I have one more job for you. This Sunday, 10 a.m., Ebenezer Baptist Church." I laid out the plan. It was simple. It was undignified. But he was a professional, and he understood the stakes. That Sunday, I walked into the service and sat right in my usual pew, the second row. I could feel the stares. I heard the whispers. I saw Deidre and the other elders looking at me with such pity. They all thought I was the crazy old woman lost in grief, fighting my poor, pregnant, grieving daughter-in-law. I just fanned myself with the church bulletin and waited. Just as the choir began their opening hymn, the doors at the back opened, and there she was. Brittany made her entrance. She was dressed in angelic white, holding the baby high on her shoulder like she was presenting him to the world. Jamal trailed behind her, looking miserable and rumpled. She didn't just walk to a pew, she paraded. She moved slowly down the center aisle, stopping, to let the other elders coo over the baby. "Oh, he's beautiful, Brittany." He has Marcus's eyes, doesn't he?" "A miracle," Brittany whispered back, loud enough for me to hear. "A gift from heaven." I just smiled and nodded at her. I didn't see Jackson. A good investigator is invisible, but I knew he was there. I had seen a new janitor's cart parked in the hallway. Halfway through Pastor Davis's sermon, right on cue, the baby started to fuss. Brittany, with a long, suffering sigh, stood up and walked the baby toward the back, heading to the nursery and the adjoining mother's changing room. I watched her go. A moment later, I saw Jackson, dressed in a janitor's blue uniform, quietly wheel his mop bucket out of a supply closet and down the same hallway. He disappeared just seconds after her. My heart was hammering so hard I thought Deidre could hear it next to me. I didn't hear a single word the pastor said for the next 10 minutes. My phone buzzed silently in my purse, just as the choir stood for the final hymn. I didn't need to look at it. I walked out of that church into the bright Atlanta sunshine, nodding politely to the whispers, and got into my car. When I got home, I checked my voicemail. It was Jackson. His voice was flat, professional, no emotion. "Mrs. Thompson, I have the asset. It's messy, but it is viable. I'm heading to the lab in Chicago now." I deleted the message. The final piece of the trap was set. The final report from the Chicago lab landed in my secure email inbox on a Tuesday morning. The next day, the legal papers arrived. My new lawyer, Carla Ray, read the motion out loud over the speakerphone in my study. Carla was not Howard. She was a fighter, a sharp sister from downtown Atlanta who knew this wasn't just a legal case. It was a war. "They're filing a motion to compel, Lena," Carla said, her voice laced with disdain, "and I am quoting directly from their motion." She cleared her throat. "We demand an immediate court-ordered DNA test comparing the infant Marcus Thompson II with his paternal uncle, Mr. Jamal Thompson." She paused for dramatic effect. "To conclusively establish the child's irrefutable bloodline connection to the Thompson family estate." I leaned back in my chair. I almost laughed. There it was, the entire, beautiful, arrogant, fatal mistake. She thought the baby was Jamal's. After all her scheming, all her lies, all her affairs, she genuinely believed her lover's child was actually her husband's. She thought she was running two scams, one on me and one on Jamal. But she got tangled in her own web. She thought a positive DNA match between the baby and Jamal would be her checkmate, her irrefutable bloodline. She had absolutely no idea that the lab report locked in my safe already proved the baby belonged to Rick Donovan. She was walking right into her own trap. "Carla," I said, my voice perfectly calm and clear, "we are going to agree." There was silence on the phone. "Lena, are you sure? We don't have to respond immediately." "No, Carla. We are going to enthusiastically agree. We welcome this test. We've been praying for this clarity." I paused. "But I have one condition." "I'm listening." "Given my delicate mental state," I said, using the very words from her filthy petition, "and given the paranoid delusions Brittany claims I'm suffering from, I simply cannot be subjected to a hostile, public hospital environment. It would be too much for my nerves." I smiled. "I insist on a private, neutral clinic, one of my choosing, for my own comfort and emotional well-being." Carla let out a low chuckle. "I see. You want to set the stage. I want a controlled environment." She called me back an hour later. She took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. She's so confident she's winning that she doesn't care where the test happens, as long as her lawyer is present to witness the sample collection. "Perfect," I said. I looked at the name of the lab Jackson had recommended. "Book the appointment, the Harrison Medical Center on Peachtree, next Tuesday at 10 a.m. "And Carla?" "Yes, Lena?" "Call Jackson. I need him to make sure Mr. Rick Donovan is at that same clinic at that exact same time. Tell him the gym's insurance requires a mandatory annual employee health screening for liability. Tell him it's for his job, whatever it takes." I looked at the portrait of Marcus hanging over my fireplace. "And Carla, tell Jackson to bring the sealed results from Chicago." The Harrison Medical Center was expensive, private, and sterile. The air smelled like money and antiseptic. It was perfect. I walked in with Amani at my side. Carla, my lawyer, was already there, a shark in a tailored suit, holding a locked briefcase. Then they arrived. Jamal looked nervous, his eyes darting around the plush waiting room, clearly uncomfortable. But Brittany was glowing. She was triumphant. She carried the baby, Marcus II, like he was a winning trophy. She was so confident, so sure she had me trapped. She leaned over and whispered something to Jamal, loud enough for me to hear. "It's almost over, honey. After today, your mother will finally have to accept the truth." I just smiled, a quiet, polite smile, and picked up a copy of Forbes from the table. A technician in blue scrubs came out. "Mrs. Hayes Thompson? Mr. Thompson? We're ready for the collection." We all filed into a clean, bright examining room. Me, Imani, Jamal, Brittany, and the baby, and both lawyers. The technician put on a pair of gloves. "All right," she said, pulling out 2 sterile swabs. "I'll be taking a buccal swab from Mr. Jamal Thompson and from the infant." Brittany held the baby out, a smug look on her face. Jamal opened his mouth. "Stop!" My voice cut through the room. It wasn't loud, but everyone froze. Jamal stopped, the swab halfway to his mouth. Brittany's lawyer sighed, annoyed. "Mrs. Thompson, is there a problem? You agreed to this. You insisted on this location." I slowly stood up from my chair. "You're right," I said, smoothing my skirt. "I did agree to a DNA test. I am very eager for the truth to come out." I looked at the technician. "But I believe we've made a mistake. We're testing the wrong man." Brittany's smug smile faltered. What are you talking about? He's the uncle. That's what we agreed to." "Oh, we're going to test Jamal," I said. "But he's not the only one." Right on cue, the door to the examining room opened. Jackson, my investigator, stepped inside. And right behind him, looking confused and annoyed, was Rick Donovan. He was still in his Atlanta Prime Fitness uniform. The color drained from Brittany's face. I had never seen a person go so pale, so fast. She looked like she had seen a ghost. "Rick?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. What are you doing here?" Jamal looked from Brittany to this strange, muscular man, and then to me. His face was a mask of confusion. "Who is Rick?" Jamal asked. "Mom, what is going on?" Brittany looked like she was about to faint. I just smiled and turned to my lawyer. "Carla, dear," I said, my voice bright and clear. "Why don't you explain?" I stood back against the wall, a silent observer in my own life. I just watched. Carla Ray, my lawyer, stepped forward. She was magnificent. She didn't just walk, she commanded the room. She placed her locked leather briefcase on the steel examining table with a heavy, final thud. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carla's voice was smooth, but it cut through the tension in that sterile room like a surgeon's scalpel. "It appears we have a significant discrepancy regarding the paternity of this child." Brittany's lawyer, a young man who suddenly looked out of his depth, started to stand up. "Now see here, Ms. Ray, we agreed." Carla held up one perfectly manicured hand, silencing him instantly. "Before we waste the technician's valuable time," Carla said, "I'd like to address the new party." She turned her sharp, intelligent eyes on the personal trainer. "Mr. Donovan, thank you for joining us." Rick looked completely baffled. He was still holding his car keys. I don't get what this is about," he stammered, looking at Jackson, who was blocking the door. "My boss just said I needed a mandatory insurance health screening for the gym." Carla gave him a small, polite smile. "Just a formality. Mr. Donovan, do you know Mrs. Brittany Hayes Thompson?" Rick's eyes darted to Brittany, who looked like she was about to be sick. "Yeah," he said, shifting his weight. She's a client at Prime Fitness. We're friends." Jamal, my son, finally spoke, his voice weak. "A friend? Honey, you never mentioned a friend named Rick." Brittany shot up from her chair, her voice suddenly high and shrill. "This is harassment. You can't do this. You can't just drag my trainer in here. This is a private family matter. We are here to test Jamal." "Actually," Carla said, her voice dropping, "we can, and we already have." Snap, snap. She opened the twin brass locks on her briefcase. "You see, Mrs. Hayes Thompson, we've been very busy. We took the liberty of collecting our own preliminary samples several weeks ago." She pulled out 2 sealed, laminated lab reports. She slid the first one across the table, stopping it perfectly in front of my son, Jamal. "This," she announced, "is Report A. It compares the DNA of the infant, Marcus Thompson II, collected legally from a discarded diaper, with the DNA of Mr. Jamal Thompson, collected from a glass he used in my client's home." Jamal stared at the paper, his hands shaking too hard to pick it up. Carla tapped the conclusion at the bottom of the page with one long fingernail. "The probability of paternity, Mr. Thompson," she said, "is 0%. The room stopped. The only sound was the buzz of the fluorescent light overhead. Jamal looked up, his face ashen, his eyes wide with a terrible, dawning horror. He turned to his wife. "What? No, that's impossible. Brittany," his voice cracked. You told me I was the father. You told me it was a miracle." "He isn't the father," Carla interrupted, her voice like steel. "But we were certainly curious who was." She slid the second report across the table, this time right in front of the stunned personal trainer. "This," she said, "is Report B. It compares the infant's DNA with the sample collected from Mr. Rick Donovan's discarded water bottle." Rick stared at it, his mouth half open. Carla tapped the final line. "The probability of paternity, 99.999%. She looked straight at Rick. "Congratulations, Mr. Donovan. It appears you are the father." The silence in that room was absolute. It was heavier and colder than any silence I have ever known. The technician, the lawyers, everyone just stood frozen. Jamal stared at the paper. His hand was shaking so badly he couldn't even pick it up. He just stared at the 0% on the page. "No," he whispered. It was just a breath of sound. "No, that's not possible." He finally looked up, his eyes finding Brittany. He looked like a man who had just been shot. His voice was cracked, broken. You lied to me?" Brittany, who had been so pale, was now bright red. "Jamal, honey, listen, I can explain. It's complicated." "Complicated?" Jamal's voice rose, breaking with a pain that was almost physical. "You told me the IVF failed. Both times. You told me the doctor said it was impossible. And then you told me you were pregnant? You said it was a miracle. You said it was mine." Before Brittany could even answer, the other man, Rick, exploded. He stepped toward her, his face dark with rage. "Wait a second. His? What the hell are you talking about?" He pointed a finger at Brittany. "You told me you were divorced. You told me this guy," he gestured at Jamal, "was your ex-husband. You said I was the father. You said we were going to be a family." I just stood there, against the wall, and watched. I watched the chaos she had created, the web of lies she had spun, all collapsing in on itself. My son, his life in ruins, completely shattered. Her lover, realizing he was just another pawn in her sick, greedy game. She had fooled them both, played them against each other, all for money, all for my money. Jamal made a sound, a low, terrible moan, and he just crumpled. He didn't just sit. He collapsed into the plastic chair, his body folding in on itself. He dropped his head into his hands, his shoulders shaking. "My whole life," he sobbed, his voice muffled by his hands. My whole life. You ruined it." Jamal was still sobbing into his hands, a broken man. Rick was shouting at Brittany, "You crazy. You lied to me. You told me you were divorced." The room was pure chaos. But Brittany was a cornered animal, and a cornered animal is the most dangerous. She realized, in that instant, that she had lost Jamal. That scam was over. So, she did the only thing she could. She pivoted. She turned all her venom back onto me. "Fine!" she shrieked, her voice echoing off the tile walls. Everyone stopped. "Fine! So he's Rick's. Who cares? It doesn't change anything." She pointed a shaking, manicured finger right at me, her eyes wild. "It doesn't change the fact that she is crazy. It doesn't change the fact that Marcus Thompson still had frozen sperm at that clinic in Florida. My claim is still real. Her attempt to disinherit that baby, that is still the truth." Her lawyer, who looked like he was about to have a heart attack, saw his opening. He scrambled to back her up, puffing out his chest. She is absolutely correct," he announced to the room, desperate to regain control. "The paternity of this infant is irrelevant. Irrelevant to the core petition. My client, Mrs. Hayes Thompson, still holds valid notarized medical directives from the late Marcus Thompson Sr." He practically spat the words. "The petition for conservatorship, based on Mrs. Lena Thompson's obvious mental instability and her refusal to honor her late husband's wishes, that petition still stands." They were grasping, desperately trying to hold on to the one lie, the one forged document they thought I couldn't disprove. I had been quiet this whole time. I let Carla handle the reports. I let them all scream. Now, I stood up. I wasn't loud. I didn't have to be. The room went dead silent. "About that," I said. My voice cut through the air, and every eye turned to me. I looked at Brittany. I looked at her lawyer. And then I looked at my son. "My husband, Marcus Thompson," I said, my voice clear and cold, "had a vasectomy." I let the words hang in the air. He had the procedure on May 14th, 1995, at St. Mary's Hospital, right after our son, Jamal, was born. I let my gaze settle on Brittany, who had frozen in place. My husband was not physically capable of fathering another child. Not then, not 10 years ago, not ever again. I paused. And he certainly never froze anything. Jamal's head snapped up. "What?" Brittany's lawyer just stared at me, his mouth open. "But Brittany," she started to laugh. It was a high, thin, cracking sound. "Lies!" she screamed. "You're lying. You have no proof. You're just a crazy old woman saying words." She turned to her lawyer, desperate for him to save her. "She's bluffing. I checked. St. Mary's Hospital. All their paper archives were destroyed in the basement flood 15 years ago. It's gone. There are no records." Brittany was actually laughing. It was a high, sharp, cracking sound that bounced off the sterile white walls. "You're lying!" she shrieked, her face twisted. "You have nothing! I checked! I told you I checked! The St. Mary's flood 15 years ago. The records are gone. She's bluffing. Tell her she's bluffing." She was looking at her lawyer now, desperate for him to save her. I just looked at her, and I smiled. It was a slow, cold smile. The kind of smile I use when an arrogant developer thinks he can lowball me on a land deal. "You're right, dear," I said, my voice quiet and pleasant. "The hospital's paper records. They might be gone in the flood. That was very good research." I paused, letting her hang there for just a second. "But you made a terrible, terrible mistake, Brittany. You underestimated me. You thought you were dealing with a confused old woman who just sits in her garden. You forgot. You are dealing with the woman who co-founded Thompson Real Estate. You forgot. I never throw away important paper." Carla, my lawyer, stepped forward again, placing her hand on her still-open briefcase. "You see, Mrs. Hayes Thompson," Carla said, her voice like silk, "my client doesn't rely on hospital archives for her personal files." I spoke again, my voice cutting through Brittany's panicked, shallow breathing. "When my husband, Marcus, had that procedure 30 years ago, I received the original, notarized certification from the surgeon. I also received the original, paid-in-full invoice." I looked right at her, enjoying the moment her eyes widened in terror. "And for 30 years, those documents have been sitting in our personal family safe, right next to our marriage certificate and the deed to our first home." Carla reached into her briefcase and pulled out a new, crisp folder. She placed it on the table with a soft, final thud. "This," Carla announced to the room, "is a certified copy of the notarized surgical report from Dr. Michael Allen, dated May 14th, 1995. She pulled out another paper. "And this is a brand new sworn affidavit from Dr. Allen, who is retired in Savannah, very much alive, and very, very angry that his name was being associated with this fraud. He confirms, under penalty of perjury, that he performed the procedure." Brittany's lawyer, the one who had looked so smug, snatched the papers from Carla's hand. His face went from pale to gray. He stared at the signature. He stared at the notary seal. He looked up at Brittany, his eyes wide with a cold fury. "You," he whispered, his voice shaking, You told me this was real. You told me you had a case." Brittany just stared, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. No, he said, he promised." But Carla wasn't finished. She held up one more finger. "Oh, we are not done," she said. "Because you see, those other documents, the fake ones from Florida, that is where this stops being a sad family dispute and starts being a criminal conspiracy." Carla pulled out one last file, Imani's research. "We have the bank records, Mr. Lawyer," Carla said, "showing wire transfers from your client's offshore gambling account directly to a Dr. Aaron Blevins in Florida." She let that hang in the air. The same Dr. Blevins, I might add, who was stripped of his medical license 2 years ago for, and I want to get this wording right, falsifying medical records for cash. The room was dead, silent. Carla looked at the other lawyer. "We call that fraud. The Atlanta District Attorney is going to call it racketeering." Brittany's lawyer. He didn't even speak. He just made a small, strangled sound in the back of his throat. He looked at Brittany with a look of pure, unadulterated contempt. Then, wordlessly, he reached for his expensive leather briefcase and snapped it shut. Click, click. The sound was as final as a gunshot. We withdraw the petition," he mumbled, already turning to leave. "Oh, not so fast," Carla said, her voice stopping him dead in his tracks. He turned back, his face pale. Carla walked slowly toward him. "You don't just get to walk away. You and your client," she said, nodding toward Brittany, "filed a fraudulent petition. You knowingly submitted forged medical documents to this court." She looked at me, then back at him. "My client, Mrs. Lena Thompson, has been subjected to public defamation. She has suffered severe emotional distress, and she has incurred significant legal fees, all based on a lawsuit that your client knew was a lie from the very beginning." Carla let that hang in the air. "We are not withdrawing. We are countersuing. For everything." Brittany's lawyer looked like he was going to be sick. But it was Jamal's voice that cut through the silence next. It wasn't the voice of the sobbing, broken man from a moment ago. It was a new voice. It was cold. It was dead. "You lied to me," he said. He wasn't looking at me, or Rick, or the lawyers. He was looking only at Brittany. She, in turn, saw her last hope. She reached out a hand to him, her eyes wide with fake, desperate tears. "Jamal, baby, please, listen to me. We can work this out." "Don't," he said. The word was flat, final. "It's over. I'm filing for divorce, and I will make sure, I will spend every last dime I have to see that you do not get one single penny from me. Not one." "And you used me," Rick suddenly roared, finding his voice. He pointed at Brittany. "You told me you were divorced. You were just using me to get pregnant, to trap him." Brittany looked back and forth between the two men she had played, her eyes wild with panic. "No, it wasn't. And," Carla said, her voice slicing through the chaos again, "we still haven't addressed the reason for this desperation." She looked at her folder. "We haven't discussed the $150,000 in online gambling debts that Mrs. Hayes Thompson is currently trying to pay off with the Thompson family's assets." The room exploded. Jamal and Rick, the husband and the lover, both turned and stared at Brittany, their faces identical masks of stunned, furious realization. It wasn't just a lie, it was a heist, and she had been caught. Jamal's head snapped up. His voice was hollow. "Gambling debt? $150,000? He looked from Carla to me, his face pale and sick, as if he couldn't comprehend the number. "Precisely," Carla said, her voice sharp and cold. She was still looking at Brittany's lawyer, who was now sweating profusely. $150,000, Mr. Thompson, financed by offshore loan sharks. We have the payment notices. The entire amount is due in 30 days. Carla finally turned her gaze to my son, and there was no pity in her eyes. "That's the real reason for all of this. That's the desperation. Your wife wasn't just trying to secure an inheritance, Mr. Thompson. She was trying to steal your father's legacy, to pay off her bookies." Before anyone could even breathe, Imani stepped forward. My granddaughter. She had been standing silently by the wall this whole time, just watching. She held up her phone, the screen glowing. "And she was willing to pay for her lies," Imani said. Her voice was clear and strong, cutting through the stunned silence of the room. "Right, Dad?" Jamal looked at her, completely lost. What are you talking about, honey?" "This," Imani said. She angled the phone screen so Jamal could see the texts. "These are her deleted messages. To Dr. Blevins, the fake doctor in Florida." She read the message out loud. $10,000 wired to his offshore account the day after she filed the petition against Grandma. Her message says, "For creating the IVF file and the backdated letter, worth every penny." I just watched my son's face. I watched him as the final, ugly, undeniable truth landed on him like a physical blow. He wasn't just duped. He wasn't just cheated on. He was a mark, a tool, a fool. He finally saw the woman he had chosen, the woman he had defended, the woman he had been willing to destroy his own mother for. He saw her for exactly what she was. Jamal's face, which had been pale with shock, slowly turned a dark, furious red. He stood up, not weak and shuffling this time. He stood up straight, his shoulders back, and he looked at his wife. "You," he whispered, his voice shaking with a rage I had never, ever heard from him. "You are a monster." That was the word that did it. Brittany knew the game was over. Her eyes went wide with a pure animal panic. She looked at Jamal's face, she looked at Rick's, she looked at me, and then she bolted. "I have to go," she stammered, scrambling for the baby carrier on the floor. "The baby, he needs... I have to..." She was running for the door, trying to flee the room, to flee the consequences, to flee the men she had destroyed. She almost made it. But Rick Donovan, the lover she had also lied to, moved faster. He stepped right in front of the door, blocking her path. His muscular arms were crossed. His face was like stone. "No," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're not going anywhere." He looked down at the baby carrier in her hand, then back up at her face. "You lied to me. You lied to him. This baby, my son, were you just using him to blackmail this family?" And just as the room was about to explode, just as Rick and Jamal were about to tear Brittany apart, the door to the examining room opened again. It wasn't a nurse this time. 2 men stepped in. They were not doctors. They were tall, wearing plain, rumpled suits. They looked tired, and they looked like they had seen everything. Their eyes scanned the room, taking in the scene. Jamal sobbing, Rick furious, Brittany trapped and hysterical, the baby starting to wail in its carrier. One of the men, the older one with graying hair, looked past all of us, and his eyes landed on Brittany. "Brittany Hayes Thompson?" he asked. His voice was quiet. It cut right through her panic. Brittany froze. Who are you?" Carla, my lawyer, stepped forward again. She looked at the detectives, then she looked at me, and she gave me the smallest, most satisfied smile. "I took the liberty of calling them on our way over," Carla said to me, her voice just loud enough for everyone to hear. "I had a feeling the Atlanta Police Department's white-collar crime division would be very interested to hear about federal wire fraud, conspiracy, and the fabrication of medical evidence in a court petition." The color left Brittany's face. This wasn't just about the family anymore. The detective stepped forward, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Ma'am," he said, his voice flat, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, for forgery, and for perjury in a court filing." He reached for her arm, and that's when she broke. She screamed. It wasn't a word. It was an animal sound, a shriek of pure, undiluted terror. "No, no, you can't." She started to thrash, trying to pull away as the detective grabbed her wrist. "Jamal!" she shrieked, her eyes wild, finding my son. "Jamal, do something! Tell them it's a mistake! Tell them you love me!" Jamal just stared at her, his face completely blank, completely dead. He didn't move. The click of the handcuffs was loud in the small room. "Lena!" she screamed at me, her voice cracking. "You did this! You bitch! You set me up! This was all you!" She was thrashing as they pulled her toward the door, her beautiful hair falling out of its clip, her face twisted and ugly with rage. I just stood there, calm. I watched them pull her out into the hallway. I looked at the woman who had tried to destroy my life, to steal my husband's name, and to have me declared insane. "No, Brittany," I said, my voice quiet, but clear enough for her to hear before the door closed. "You set yourself up." I just turned on the lights." The door clicked shut. Brittany was gone. The sound of her screaming and fighting faded down the hallway, leaving a heavy, ringing silence in the sterile room, and then a new sound started, a thin, wailing cry. The baby, Marcus II, still in his carrier on the floor, had started to scream. He was hungry or scared. He just knew his mother, the only person he knew, had been dragged away. Rick Donovan, the personal trainer, just stood there, staring at the baby carrier. He looked stunned, as if he'd been struck by lightning. He looked over at Jamal, who was still slumped against the wall, his face pale and sick. Then he looked at me. His voice was hoarse. "So, I'm his father?" He said it like a question, like he was hoping one of us, anyone, would tell him it was all just a terrible, terrible mistake. Jamal didn't even look at him. My son slowly, mechanically, pushed himself off the wall. He looked gray. His eyes were completely empty, dead. He mumbled, "I need air. I can't breathe." He stumbled out of the room. He didn't run, he just left. He walked out, not a husband, not a son, just a ghost. He didn't even look back at the crying child. So there we were, me, my granddaughter Imani, my lawyer, Carla, the terrified young lab technician, and this man, this stranger, and his crying, abandoned son. My heart, which had been so cold and hard with anger for months, suddenly ached. I looked at that little boy in the carrier, this innocent child. He hadn't asked for any of this. He hadn't asked to be born into a web of lies and greed and desperation. He didn't deserve to be a pawn. He didn't deserve any of it. I walked over to Rick. I stood directly in front of him until his panicked eyes finally met mine. "What happens next is up to you, Mr. Donovan," I said. My voice was quiet, but firm. "You have two choices right now. You can walk out that door. You can follow my son into the hallway and pretend this day never, ever happened. No one here will stop you." I paused, letting the weight of it land on him. "Or you can be a father." He stared at me, his face a war of total confusion and raw fear. The baby's cry hitched, a high, sad, gasping sound. Rick's gaze dropped from my face, down to the baby carrier on the floor. He watched his son crying. He just watched him. Watched. For a long, long time. Then he took a deep, shuddering breath. He closed his eyes for just a second. When he opened them, the panic was gone. It was replaced by something new, something hard, something resolved. He looked back at me. "I'll be his father," he said. His voice was shaky, but it was firm. I don't know how. I don't know what to do, but I'll be his father." I nodded once. Good. Carla and Jackson would handle the legalities of that. One problem was solved. The innocent child had an answer. But my biggest problem, my real problem, my broken, shattered son, had just walked out the door. And I had no idea if he would ever come back. I left the exam room. The door shut quietly behind me, sealing off the sound of Rick Donovan trying to comfort his crying, newborn son. Carla and Imani stayed inside to manage the legalities, to talk to the technicians, to handle the fallout. I needed air. I didn't have to go far. He was crumpled on a plastic bench by the elevators, halfway down the long, sterile corridor. My son, Jamal. He was sitting... No. He was collapsed. His head was buried in his hands. His expensive suit jacket was bunched up around his shoulders, and his whole body was shaking with silent sobs. I walked over and sat down on the bench next to him. I didn't touch him. I didn't reach out. I just sat there, my hands folded in my lap, and I waited. The only sound was the quiet hum of the lights and the awful muffled gasps coming from my son. After a long minute, he finally spoke. His voice was thick, ruined. "Mom." He lifted his head, and his face. It was just wrecked. It was the face of a man whose entire world had been detonated. Tears streamed down his cheeks, unashamed. "Mom, I'm so stupid," he whispered, his voice cracked. I believed her. I believed all of it. I'm so stupid." I looked at him, my only son. The temptation to reach out, to smooth his hair, to say, "It's okay," was overwhelming. It's the mother's instinct. But I didn't. Love isn't always soft. Sometimes, love has to be the truth. "Yes, you did, Jamal," I said. My voice was quiet, but it was hard. There was no comfort in it. "You didn't just believe her," I continued, my voice staying flat. "You chose to. You chose to stand by that woman against your own mother. You chose to sign your name on a legal document that called me insane. You chose to believe that your father, my Marcus, was a liar and a traitor." I finally turned to look him full in the face. "You did all of that because you were too weak to face the truth. I love my son. I have always loved him. But loving him doesn't mean I am blind. Marcus always knew. He always said Jamal was too soft, too easily influenced. He doesn't have our spine, Lena," Marcus used to tell me, his voice sad. I never wanted to believe it. Until today. "What have I done?" Jamal whispered, not to me, but to the sterile tile floor. He was rocking back and forth. I tried to declare my own mother incompetent. I helped her. Oh God, Mom." He finally looked at me, his eyes wild with the full, horrifying realization. I helped her. I met his gaze. I didn't flinch. I let him see the pain he had caused. I let him see the consequences. "Yes, Jamal," I said. "You did." Jamal looked up at me from the bench, his face just a wreck of tears and snot and self-loathing. He looked like a child. "Mom, what can I do?" he whispered, his voice broken. How do I fix this? How can I ever fix this?" I looked down at my son. The mother in me wanted to fold. The mother in me wanted to say, "It's okay, baby, we'll figure it out." But the woman Brittany had tried to destroy, the woman who had just fought for her life and her legacy, that woman knew the truth. "You can't," I said. My voice was quiet, but it was absolute. "You can't fix what happened, Jamal. You can't undo it. You can't unsign those papers. You can't unbelieve those lies. You can't unbreak my heart." He flinched, as if I had slapped him. "You can't fix the past," I said. "But mate, you can decide who you are going to be, starting right now." Just then, the door to the exam room opened. Imani stepped out. She looked at her father, crumpled on the bench, and then she walked over and stood right next to me. She didn't say a word. She just stood there, shoulder to shoulder with me. I looked at her, then back at Jamal, and I felt the anger rise again, cold and sharp. "You have," I said, my voice low, "an amazing daughter, Jamal. A brilliant, loyal 17-year-old girl who just fought harder for this family's legacy than you ever have." I pointed at Imani. "She is the one who found the truth. She is the one who protected me, while you were actively trying to help destroy me." Jamal couldn't even look at his own child. He just stared at the floor, ashamed. "You want to fix this?" I asked. He nodded, a desperate, pathetic motion. "All right, here's your chance. It starts right now. Your first step is you are going to apologize to your daughter. You are going to apologize to Imani for failing her, for not being the father she deserved." He looked at Imani, his eyes swimming. "Imani, I'm so—" After that, I cut him off. "Your second step is Monday morning, 8 o'clock, sharp. You will be at the Thompson Foundation offices." He looked up, a flicker of hope, confusion. "You will not be coming in as a vice president. You will not be coming in as my son." I leaned down, just a little. "You will be coming in as an unpaid intern, in the basement, in the file room. You will scan documents. You will fetch coffee, and you will learn from the ground up what your father actually built." Jamal just stared at me. His face was a mess of confusion and disbelief. An intern?" he stammered. The word sounded absurd on his tongue. "Mom, I'm a vice president." "No," I said, my voice flat and final. "You were a vice president. You were a vice president who was so blind, so weak, and so easily led that you tried to have your own mother declared mentally incompetent so your con artist wife could pay off her gambling debts." I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. The truth was loud enough. "You have proven," I said, "that you cannot be trusted with money. You have proven that you cannot be trusted with people. You have proven that you cannot be trusted with the Thompson name." I stood up from the bench, brushing off my skirt. "So, you have a choice, Jamal. You can learn. You can go back to the very, very beginning and learn what this family, what your father, actually stood for." I looked at him, my heart breaking, but my will like iron. "Or you can walk out that door. You can follow that woman and her web of lies. You can go be a fool for the rest of your life. It's your choice, but you will not be a Thompson while you do it." The silence in the hallway was absolute. It was just me, and my son, and my granddaughter. Jamal looked at me, his eyes searching my face for what? Softness? A way out? He found none. Then his gaze shifted. He looked at Imani. He looked at his daughter, the daughter who had been smarter than him, the daughter who had been stronger than him, the daughter who had just saved the entire family, while he was busy helping to set it on fire. He saw in her face all the strength he lacked, all the loyalty he had betrayed. A deep, shuddering sob escaped his chest. It was the sound of a man breaking completely. He turned his whole body toward her. "Imani," he choked out. He could barely get the words past his tears. "Imani, I am so sorry." He put his hands over his face. I was a terrible father. I was so wrong. I believed, oh God, Imani, I'm so sorry." Imani just looked at him. She didn't cry. She didn't hug him. She didn't say, "It's okay." She just stood there for a long moment. And then she gave one single sharp nod. It was enough. Jamal took another shaky breath. He wiped his face, not with a handkerchief, but with the sleeve of his expensive, rumpled suit. He turned back to me. His eyes were red. He was destroyed. But for the first time in his life, he looked like a man making his own decision. "Monday," he said, his voice hoarse. 8 a.m. He paused, and his voice firmed up, just a little. "I'll be there." I nodded. Once. It was the first step. It was a long, dark road back, but it was the first time in years I thought, maybe there was still hope for my son after all. 6 months later, I was back where I belonged. I was sitting in Marcus's heavy oak chair in my office at the Thompson Foundation. The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows, and I was reviewing the new stack of scholarship applications. It felt good. It felt right. The world had settled. Brittany, faced with Imani's digital evidence and my 30-year-old receipt, had taken a plea deal. She was serving a 3-year sentence for fraud, perjury, and forgery. And Jamal, my son, he was downstairs. He was in the mailroom, just as he had promised. He'd shown up that Monday morning at 8 a.m. sharp, and he hadn't missed a day since. He was sorting mail. He was scanning the old files, learning the business from the very bottom. He and Imani were in therapy twice a week. It was a long, slow, painful road back, but he was walking it. The office door creaked open, and Imani walked in, dropping her heavy school backpack onto the leather sofa. "Hey, Grandma," she said. "How was your day?" I leaned back in my chair and felt a genuine smile spread across my face. The first light-hearted smile I'd felt in nearly a year. "It was wonderful, baby," I said. "We just finalized the funding for 3 new female engineering students at Morehouse. We're naming the scholarship after you." Imani smiled. She walked over to the large oil portrait of Marcus that hung above the fireplace. She just looked at it for a long moment, at his kind, strong face. "She thought you were naive," Imani said, her voice quiet. "Brittany. She thought you were just some confused, tacky old woman. And Dad," she sighed. "He thought you were weak." She finally turned to look at me, her eyes so much like his. "They both forgot. They forgot that you're the one who built all of this with him." I smiled. I reached into the top drawer of my desk. I keep it there now, not locked away in the safe. I keep it as a reminder. I pulled out the folded, notarized document from 1995, the vasectomy report. "Oh, honey," I said, holding the paper, that small, powerful piece of the truth. "They didn't just forget who I was. They forgot the most important rule in the book." I looked at my granddaughter, my true legacy. They forgot that an old woman is not the same thing as a foolish woman. I put the paper back in the drawer. Marcus's legacy is safe, Imani, and thanks to you, so is your future. So that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you think I was right to give my son, Jamal, another chance at the foundation, even after he betrayed me so badly? Or was he just as guilty as Brittany? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The story of Lena and Brittany teaches us a powerful lesson that resonates deep in our bones. Never, ever underestimate the person sitting quietly across the dinner table. For 68 years, Lena Thompson had built an empire. Yet her own family saw her as nothing more than a tacky old woman. Her son, Jamal, saw her as weak. Her daughter-in-law, Brittany, saw her as a confused, senile vault, ready to be robbed. They thought her age made her foolish. They forgot that age also brings wisdom. They forgot that this old woman had run a business for decades. She knew how to read people, and more importantly, she knew how to keep records. While Brittany was busy spinning a web of digital lies, forged documents, and family betrayal, Lena was quietly gathering the one thing that always wins: the cold, hard, undeniable truth. This story isn't just about family drama. It's a reminder that true strength isn't about being the loudest or the most deceitful. True strength is about integrity. It's about knowing your worth, protecting your legacy, and waiting patiently for the precise moment to turn on the lights and watch the roaches scatter. Greed always makes one fatal mistake. It always underestimates the quiet strength of integrity. Do you think Lena was right to give Jamal another chance at the foundation, or was he just as guilty as Brittany?